Hello and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. As usual, I am joined with Nathan, and I'm sorry for all those listening and watching this podcast for yet the fifth episode running is going to be a pretty negative one. Middlesbrough have been beaten yet again. There's been no managerial change. Of course, off the back of last week's episode, there was all kinds of rumours circulating online. All of the Chinese whispers were in full force. But ultimately, we went to Bristol on Friday evening with Michael Carrick in the dugout. And unfortunately, even after the public backing and all of the hope that it could prove to be a point that sparked some kind of turnaround in Borough's fortunes, we got exactly what we were all expecting, really. Nathan, we've got this sort of 30 minutes to an hour, I guess, to act as a bit of a therapy session for both of us. And if anyone listening likes to use it as the same, then we hope we can put our positive spin on it, possibly a bit of humour thrown in there. And yeah, just try and forget about Friday night as soon as possible. Yeah, let's just kind of throw it back, as I say, to after we'd recorded last week. We, of course, recorded a little bit earlier than usual, and it meant that kind of for Sunday evening at least and Monday morning, it allowed us to basically just be fixated on forums, social media, anything really, group chats, to try and sort of see, is Watford going to be the end of Michael Carrick? Will Steve Gibson pull the trigger? There was lots of rumours swirling around. There was lots of speculation. And I think it was pretty evident early on Monday morning that one way or another, we were going to get some kind of statement or some kind of noise as to, yes, he's going, or no, he's going to have the next however many games, or no, he's going to get the dreaded sort of public backing. And although it wasn't in an official capacity, obviously Scott and Craig, both from the Gazette and Echo, around about lunchtime on Monday, confirmed that Steve Gibson was going to publicly back Michael Carrick off the back of Watford. From that sort of piece of news dropping, what was your reaction? Because I think we probably both made our feelings quite clear off the back of last week's podcast that it did feel a little bit like the end. It felt like for Middlesbrough's season to stand a chance of being somewhat successful, there was probably going to need to be a change. And then obviously we've had the sort of public backing, the dreaded public backing. And yeah, it's a bit of a bizarre, before a ball had even been kicked on Friday night, it was a bit of a bizarre situation, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, completely. As you mentioned there, after we'd recorded last Saturday evening after the Watford game, the rumblings on social media and the forums were that there would be a change. We thought that there would be news on that Monday. There was, but it wasn't the one that we were expecting. It was that Carrick had full backing, which for those that have seen enough of football over their lifetime, they'll know that full backing means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It usually means you'll have a couple more games, otherwise we're going to have to make a change. And look, just so happened that our next two games fall away from home before returning to Derby at the Riverside next Saturday. So we'll wait and see on that front. But I just found it all a little bit strange. There's no smoke without fire. 100% is what I'm saying.
I think the whole thing felt strange. It did shock me, I'm not going to lie. To answer my own question as to how I felt when that article dropped from Scott and obviously the piece from Craig, I was surprised because it did feel like the end following the reaction to halftime and full time, the atmosphere in the stadium. Even like you said in the last podcast, Carrick sounded like a beaten man, didn't he? He sounded like an absolutely beaten man in that press conference after, or the interview with Tees after. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's what's happened. We've had another game since then, but it just felt bizarre. There's a certain way of thinking in which you could say, well, Middlesbrough have just backed themselves into a corner here. They've made themselves look a little bit stupid because knowing Middlesbrough, their record at Bristol City, their record at Stoke, and going up against Mark Robins, there was always a very, very realistic possibility that Middlesbrough could lose both of those games. And only 2 games after giving your manager a public backing, you're potentially in a position where you've got no other choice than to part ways with that manager, with that head coach. And look, you've got one theory, another theory, which I'm not saying will have had the ultimate deciding factor. I think the timing of season tickets and early bird renewals has probably worked in Michael Carrick's favour a little bit. Now, it's not that the whole marketing campaign has been, centered around Michael Carrick or anything like that. It doesn't include any of the players as well. So you could say, well, that marketing campaign could have gone out even if we didn't have a manager. But I really find it hard to kind of imagine that we would have sacked Michael Carrick on Monday and then released information about sign up for next season. It's going to be really exciting. We don't have a manager. The prices have frozen, but it's still one of the most exciting places to be for next season and one of the most expensive tickets. It just wouldn't have kind of gone hand in hand, would it? But yeah, it felt more of a shock given the noises and just my general feeling, to be honest. And that's what I was worried about. I think I didn't say it last week, but my main concern was, and we're in a lot worse position now, and obviously we'll get on to Bristol City and how that unfolded. But my main concern was, you've got 2 away games coming up. The next time that you're back at the Riverside, it's a Derby team that are absolutely struggling. If you go away and lose 2 games, what kind of impact is that going to have on your season in general? And also, are you really willing to probably double the magnitude of the negativity around a home fixture when you play in Derby County? I don't know. I don't know if Steve Gibson would want to take that risk, to be honest. But yeah, it just felt like this is probably going to delay the inevitable. That's the way I felt. And it's a really negative way of looking at it. Some people were happy. I must admit, even though not based off anything, just pure blind faith from my side. And I know a lot of people felt the same. And what I also want to say is it's not wrong to feel this way, because I spoke about the negativity on Middlesbrough's social media at the moment, and rightfully so. I mean, yeah, we've lost however many games in a row, but it's very much what I noticed. There's a lot of kind of, you can't think one way 1 minute and then change your mind the next. It's, everyone's almost trying to prove each other wrong, say, this is your fault. You shouldn't back Carrick. You shouldn't feel excited. You shouldn't want the team to win. You shouldn't applaud the players. It's just, it's a horrible negative environment at the moment, a horrible space being a Middlesbrough fan, to be honest. And yeah, I as I say, through blind faith, thought, do you know what? He's back Carrick. All you can do as a supporter is support the team, hope for the best, hope that he turns it around. And a lot of people, to be fair, because of Michael Carrick's character and the way that he conducts himself, basically thought, we're going to hear from him in the week. He's going to speak to the press, give us something to really grasp a hold of, to really, think we can turn this round. This is just a bad run and you're the right man still. And in fairness, he come out fighting a little bit in his press conference. He come out a lot more bullish than what he previously has. A lot of people have asked for it, me included. He almost, it felt like in that press conference, he genuinely felt embarrassed by the whole thing, that the fact that he had to be publicly backed was a bit embarrassing for him. He used the word pathetic, not the public backing. I think he obviously was, he did appreciate the support, but certainly he kind of wanted to emphasize the fact that, he doesn't see his family an awful lot doing this job. He does this because he wants to. He does this because he believes in the project. He believes in himself, and he believes that he can turn this round. And yeah, as I say, rightfully so, some people were kind of the mindset of, yeah, maybe this is what we needed. He's done a public message. Tommy Conway and Bergsorg obviously put those social media posts out, and you thought, right, if we can go to Bristol City and get something positive, let's really use it as our Borja Science moment last season and spin this season on its head. And to be honest, I'll use the phrase again, in blind faith, I thought that might be the case. But deep down in the pit of my stomach, I knew what was coming on Friday evening. And in the end, my gut feeling and a lot of other people's gut feeling was proven right, because we were beaten, and it was just the same old story of everything as to why we kind of find ourselves in this position in the first place, really.
Yeah, beaten quite embarrassingly in the context of how the game went, which we'll get on to. Yeah, a couple of changes to the team, which we both were relatively happy with. I think what we saw was probably more of a 4-4-2, really, with Whittaker and Bergzorg as your wingers. Iheanacho and Conway both playing alongside each other up front. Look, the game again, we're not seeing any sort of signs of the Borough of 2 months ago where we were good going forward. We've been poor going forward in the last couple of weeks.
It's become apparent to me, and I think I said this early on in it this season, and it was before. I think it would have been before that sort of fantasy run of 3 games where we scored a gazillion goals and won 3 games on the bounce, and everyone thought, "Oh my God, we've arrived. This is Michael Carrick's team, and this is Michael Carrick's team that's going to challenge for the automatics." But God, Middlesbrough without Ben Doak is a pretty brutal reality, isn't it? There's no direct runners, there's no dynamism. It's slow. The build-up's not great. There's no balls being put across the face of the box. There's a lack of balls into the box, full stop, really. And when you've got someone like Tommy Conway, we've seen this season, he's still got one of the best goals to game ratios or goals to minute ratios in the division. He thrives off balls into the box. And obviously Ryan Giles was ill. We didn't have him. Morgan Whittaker wants to get in off the byline and come inside and be central and get shots off. Very, very different type of player to Ben Doak. But yeah, as you say, it was more of a 4-4-2. It was more functional than what we saw against Watford. Iheanacho looked slightly more comfortable in the role with Tommy Conway, a little bit closer to him. But to be honest, even when we went 1-0 up, Bristol City had started the better and probably should have been in front. I think Twine went close with a free kick from quite a way out, to be fair. And then Mehmeti went close as well. And as I say, even when we took the lead, and of course it was going to be Tommy Conway. Of course it was going to be Tommy Conway. And by the way, can I just say, for all of the stick that he's getting, look, if a player had left in the same circumstances, we would probably feel the same. But I do find it very funny, the fact that he was hurled abuse at for 90 minutes. Even leading up to his goal, he received all kinds of dog's abuse. Scores, puts his fingers in his ears almost to say, I'm just blocking out the noise. You can say what you like, I'm blocking out the noise. Obviously, typical football fans, everyone's thought, well, he's taking the mick, he's mocking it. Look, they've obviously got the end result and kind of celebrated in a way. There was lots of responses to our tweets on Friday evening of photos of George Earthy doing the Tommy Conway celebration. And to be honest, usually it would be something that would rattle me, rattle you, rattle the supporters. But in all honesty, Bristol City fans, we've got much bigger problems at the moment. And I really couldn't care less. It is just, I mean, let's just talk about the performance. As I say, we took the lead, but the start to the game and everything after that was shit again.
Yeah, it was, as said at the start when I was sort of leading into my overall view on the game, was that can't attack in the same way that we used to without Doak, really. You haven't got Latte Laths pressing at the top of the pitch. As a result, we look crap, really. There's a lot of talk about what's our best sort of back four. I thought Borges did pretty okay on the whole throughout the game on Friday night. Dijksteel, moments in the first half and the second half, misjudging the ball and the bounce of the ball, it running beyond him, players running beyond him. Yeah, it was just a typical Anthony Dijksteel performance, reverting back to type really. Centre halves. I was clear on all three of them really that it's a toss up currently between all three of them. They're all currently playing at a similar level to each other. Not for the want of trying, by the way. They are throwing the bodies on the line, in fairness to all of them, but it's just not coming off at this moment in time. They battered us from pillar to post, really. Battered us all the way through the first half. We got a break, scored our goal. They still battered us from then on. Should have been 1-1 at half time at the absolute very least. It wasn't. Came out into the second half. They again had chances. And here comes your turning point in the game,
Yeah.
which is Liam Manning makes a triple substitution on probably 55 minutes. And the response of the Bristol City players leaving the pitch, in Mark Sykes's view, was that he shouldn't have been removed from
And Sinclair
the pitch.
Armstrong.
Yeah,
He was kicking bottles, throwing his bib about. He was not happy.
yeah. So two of the three subs dragged off, kicking and screaming, and Liam Manning got the last laugh because it changed the game. You Hirakawa came on and played up against Borges. Looked a little bit off it at first, but then at the end of the day, drives at Borges, delivers across to the back post. Dijksteel, all at sea really. Whitaker, as mentioned at the start, and talking about our formation, the wingers don't really want to track back. He has to be aware of Pring, I think it was, coming in and yeah, delivers across back across the face of goal. It evades everyone in a sewer green shirt, and yeah, George Earthy taps in. And from that moment you think this game's only going one way unless there's a reaction. There wasn't a reaction. There was no substitutions. The game continued in the same manner that it was going anyway. I can't really remember us getting out of our own half in the second half, which is
I
truly
yeah.
poor.
Yeah, I just remember kind of aimless balls up to Iheanacho
Yeah,
and him trudging round as though he was blown out of his arse. And the worst part is, and can I just say, look, you've got a different view. You're up in the space station when you're watching Bristol City from a television camera. So maybe you see the game differently. But two of the worst commentators that I've ever experienced who were on Sky Sports Plus, dreadful throughout, were making players' names up, were kind of just making it up as they went along. They even said, the co-commentator went, I really think Iheanacho, Michael Carrick should make a move and get him off the pitch. He's struggling to press. He looks knackered. He hasn't played a lot of football for Sevilla all season. And I think they could really do with some fresh legs because, he's just not able to contribute anything really. Lo and behold, a few minutes later, Iheanacho finds himself in a position where he shouldn't be in the first place. And because he's knackered and because he's just ran out of steam, he kind of lazily just bumps into one of the Bristol City players on the edge of the box. It's clumsy, it's lazy, and it's just crap. And he should have been off the pitch. Michael Carrick should have seen that he could barely move. We spoke about it last weekend, he looks unfit at the best of times. So to get 60 minutes or whatever it was out of him and still keep him on the pitch and think that that was a good idea is just absolutely baffling. But it all comes down to the fact that he makes a lazy lunge. Twine, he had a free kick moments before that I was adamant he was going to stick in the top corner. He nearly does with this one, rattles it off the bar. The wall is, I don't know what they're doing. they've all kind of got their own things going on. Hackney's sort of looking, he makes a half attempt to kind of follow it in just for effect, really, but isn't quick enough to react. The remainder of the wall don't really know what day of the week it is. Travers is trying to get up. He's at full stretch, obviously, when Twine hits the bar. And obviously, yeah, Bristol City take the lead. But as you say, the second half in general, it's not even the goals that I'm like really wound up with. It's just yet again, the common theme. We've spoken about it. I can't even think how many times throughout this season, or even going back to last season with Michael Carrick, his in-game management is non-existent. And as you say, the turning point in this game is when Liam Manning has been proactive instead of reactive, and he's won Bristol City the game. And even if he'd have made one substitution and took Iheanacho off and put Force up there, someone who is going to, yes, okay, his finishing hasn't been the best. He hasn't exactly looked as sharp as what he did last season, for example, when he had that great run of scoring. But you know what you're going to get with Marcus Force? He's going to work his arse off. Just put him on and say, Chase and Harry, give Conway a little bit of a breather. Conway will still do that. And if you get a chance, then you'd feel pretty confident that one of those would work a goalkeeper. And yeah, it's just, I feel like going into the game, you wanted to give Michael Carrick one last chance. And then that moment in that game was kind of the final nail in this is on you.
Yeah, literally. I think a lot of people had grown tired, and the ones that were ready to give him the opportunity one final time. Look, 4 defeats in 5 prior to this. 4 defeats in 5. That's pathetic, like pathetic beyond belief for a team in this division that has aspirations of being even in the top half, for Christ's sake,
Yeah.
right? And just the absolute either inability to see what's going on or just being incredibly stubborn beyond belief, where you can't make a change, where okay, the centre forward that you may have wanted to sign in January is on the pitch, but the fans have now seen him for 3 games and he's looked shite for all 3 games, for all 3. He looks unfit and unable to get about the pitch, and the contrast between him and Lath is chalk and cheese. It's ridiculous. And for him to be on the pitch at minute 82 when that free kick hits the bar and they score the rebound. The first subs were at 83 minutes. 7 minutes to go, and you're now 2-1 down. You can't defend it, unfortunately. I've wanted to be his biggest defender for as long as he's been here, but the in-game management of him and his coaching staff behind him, who are evidently not advising him well enough that a change needs to be made, not even advising him, but just telling him, right, he is absolutely blowing out of his arse up front, make a change. And they failed to do it once again. Look, I'm not naive enough to think that Borough, with 4 defeats in 5 prior to this, are going to rock up at Bristol City and just blow them away. But you find yourself 1-0 up. Fortunately, by the way, you have to make changes in order to close out that game. Even if you get a point from it, it stops the rot. But again, the run continues. 5 defeats in 6. Yeah, it's diabolical. We saw it full time. the manager went over to the away end, 1,500 of the hardy souls that travelled down there to a ground where we never get anything at on a Friday night, following a team that at the minute look tragic, really, throughout. Can't really defend, get overrun in midfield. Again, not for the want of trying from the pair of them in there. And unfortunately, at the top of the pitch, don't create too many chances at this moment in time. And yeah, we just look well and truly naff. A team that is falling down the table and is showing no signs of stopping that, unfortunately. And look, you've got your manager there pointing at himself, taking blame in front of the away end. Okay, great. Why didn't you make changes?
Yeah, and I think there was two things where, well, two, three. I've probably really undersold it there, but two or three main things for me, which are real signs of, this just can't continue. Firstly, you speak of the backroom staff and Carrick kind of just stood there like stroking his chin aimlessly. There was an image on the coverage of the game for a few seconds in the second half, I think after it had gone 2-1. And it was really telling for me. It was Carrick stood in his technical area, and then Graham Carrick, Grant Ledbetter, Jonathan Woodgate, and Alan Fettis just sat on the bench. All sat, not stood up, not offering Carrick any advice. And basically just sat there almost, and I'm not saying that it is the case, but it almost looked as though they were thinking, have you got any idea what to do? Have you got any suggestions? Should we go and say anything? Should we go and have a word with the head coach? Carrick's left there alone with no input from any of his coaching staff as to, as you say, changes, freshening things up, making game-winning decisions. That was a major sort of telling image where I just think I've very much tried my best all season to not go down the route of we need leadership, we need experience. And I'm not still saying that we do, but all I'm saying is if we do make a change, can we just let the manager or the head coach bring in whoever he wants and let the actual coach do that? Let's not just kind of do a bit of a, well, yeah, we'll bring your assistant in, but you've got to have at least one member of a Middlesbrough squad between 2005 and 2015 also on your coaching staff. It's kind of just a rule round here. Let's not do that. Let's bring in specialist coaches, specialist assistant managers, people that can influence, people that can really make a change, people that can support a head coach when he is struggling, when he might need someone to go, no, that's wrong, or you need to do this now. We all can see that this is happening. You might not be able to, but we're here to support you and give you that advice. So that's one image. The second one was just the Borges and Carrick sort of incident in general. Borges, it's it's bad. It's like the Barnsley games over the years where Middlesbrough teams in turmoil have sort of trudged down the tunnel and a manager's had to walk past a full away end of supporters being hurled abuse at, being shouted at, and rightfully so. People pay their money. They're entitled to, within reason, kind of make their feelings known, especially when you've travelled that far. Borges, to be fair, credit to him. I've got no problem with that. He looks devastated and Carrick's trying to console him. But just that image again, it just feels like images like that are when you know it's the end. And then the final thing, just another point on basically just knowing that it shouldn't continue, and we shouldn't even wait until Tuesday evening to probably inevitably get beat again. We should just start afresh the fact that in his post-match interview with BBC Tees, Michael Carrick actually preempts himself answering a question from Mark from BBC Tees. When he's asked, it's basically thrown to Michael Carrick. I'm sure you've probably heard the clip, and I'm sure many people have as well. But Mark from BBC Tees says, Liam Manning made 3 changes in the 55th minute. Do you think that was the moment where the game sort of turned on its head? And before even answering the question, Carrick is quick to kind of get a little bit touchy and say, well, I suppose you're going to ask me why I didn't make changes then. He knows. And obviously the benefit of hindsight, of course, he's going to know. But if he himself is anticipating being asked that question, it's the first sign where he's sort of visibly or audibly been almost tetchy or wound up. Yeah, but it's the first real time where it was almost like, without, I don't think he's meant for it to come across like that, but for the way that I interpreted it, it just felt like a bit of an acceptance of they've figured me out here.
It felt like the end last week. It feels like the end now. We're going to go to Stoke on Tuesday night, and Michael Carrick's going to be in the dugout.
Yeah.
And it feels like I can't come on here and say that, oh, well, Michael Carrick's going to be in the dugout for Tuesday night and he's got to try and get a tune out of these players. It feels like another game that's going to go begging, and another game where we're going to face defeat again. Because as a fan, having watched them over the last month now, we've gone a month full of defeat, actually. Nothing else but defeat, apart from well, yeah, that's it. A month of defeat. And we head to Stoke on Tuesday night, who are another club in a little bit of disarray at the moment. I think Robbins he's been there 2 months, something like that, and they've only won 2 games.
I think what's most worrying for me is the fact that Stoke's home form, although there's not a lot of wins in there since Mark Robbins took over, has actually been all right. I mean, there's a lot of draws in there, but I think they've actually had a few sort of, well, I mean, they haven't lost that much at home since Mark Robbins took over. They've been pretty dreadful away from home. But yeah, like you say, Middlesbrough are going to, and how ironic that it's Mark Robbins. Middlesbrough are going to play against a Mark Robbins side. And it does feel like, I think for me, when we got that statement on Monday, it felt like, right, you're going to have at least 2 games to try and save your job. I can't foresee a world where if Middlesbrough get beat again, that this can roll on and we'll have a home game with probably about 10 people in attendance, all of which will be booing as Matt Clark seals the winner for Derby. It's just,
Yeah,
I said, you can tell by mine and Nathan's voice, it's gone past the point of anger. This season is very much teetering on the edge of being over. And yet, despite the fact that teams are starting to pick up form, there's still probably just, and it would be extremely unlikely, but there's probably just enough time to try and revive it. But another defeat at Stoke, it just feels like this season, from a season that had so much promise, is going to be yet another waste of time.
yeah, it is. We're slowly slipping down the table, as I sort of explained. I think Friday night and then Saturday's results was the first time in this run of form where you've seen a jump in Middlesbrough's league position, and we now lie in the bottom half of the championship table for a team that was teetering in 5th, 6th, 7th, and then within the space of a couple of weeks, you've been hit with poor performance after poor performance, poor result after poor result, and bang, 13th. So yeah, we go to Stoke on Tuesday night. You mentioned their home form. I've just had a look. They haven't been beaten at home since Mark Robbins has gone there.
Yeah.
So that's just great. But on the
What a way
contrary,
to what a way to pick the mood up there. And I think just on the topic of league position and kind of where Borough's season lies, what's more concerning is this is Borough's opportunity to basically somehow get themselves back in and amongst it, because this is their game in hand. And I hate just the phrase game in hand, because there's no points there. You've still got to win it. It counts for nothing at the end of the season, a game in hand. But this is their game in hand, and this is an opportunity to make their league position a lot more respectable and really give, hopefully, some glimmer of hope to Borough's season. Do I think they will go to Stoke and win? Absolutely not. But yeah, we've got Derby at home on the Saturday, Nathan. I can't, I think I've already said this, but I can't, regardless of the public backing, if we do not win, even if we draw at Stoke, I just cannot see how we can go to the Riverside and Michael Carrick still be in charge. And I don't want it to become a completely toxic ending, but I fear that if Steve Gibson lets it roll on to Saturday and we haven't picked up a win between now and then, it'll be that. It'll be exactly that. And to be honest, it's his own doing, but I feel like Michael Carrick will have been thrown under the bus a little bit in terms of just even allowing it to continue longer than what it should have. And look, I'm not saying that this is Steve Gibson's fault, but I just it shouldn't. Friday's game, Michael Carrick shouldn't have been charged in any case, because we all knew what was coming. And yeah, apathy. I think I'm going through stages at the moment. It's like a breakup, to be honest. It's coming to an end. You know that there's nothing really you can do to save it. You try your best to sort of spice things up, get a new lease of life, be a bit more on the front foot. And yet it's just not had the desired effect, has it? Michael Carrick's done everything this week to go against, and it felt premeditated, didn't it? It felt like it's not in his nature to go out and be on the front foot and be bullish. And I know I've asked that of him, but it felt like an act. And I always feel like any manager, if you listen to any football podcasts or any stories of players, when a manager begins to act or try and be something that they're not, they quickly get found out. And I think you seeing that, you saw the cracks start to appear from Michael Carrick's persona in the whole, as I say, the quote about, well, I guess you're going to ask me about why I didn't make changes now. I don't want it to get so toxic that it becomes something a lot worse than what it is. It's not working. It shouldn't continue, but I don't want it to be a complete horrible ending. And I feel like it's now probably going to become that. And if I'm honest, what I would ask from Steve Gibson, I'm sure he's not listening to this podcast, but just the hierarchy in general, is that even though you've backed yourselves into a corner a little bit and gone out and publicly said, we believe that Michael Carrick is still the man to deliver promotion, just swallow your pride, because this isn't going anywhere. This season isn't going anywhere. And yes, there's a absolutely tiny bit of me inside that's saying, well, if we got a bit of a new manager bounce, like, we might be able to gate crash the playoffs and just like get something out of this team. The reality is I don't even think that's a possibility now. And that's how far we've fallen in just a space of a few weeks. But please, if we don't win, even if we draw, just swallow your pride and admit that you should have done this a week and a half ago. because this can't continue, and it's just so disappointing. It's sad, really.
I think that's us pretty much summed up, Chris.
Yeah. There's not too much to add. There's really not. And listen, we do a podcast each week. We love it when we're winning. We love it sometimes when things aren't as bad and we can try and dissect things. But this podcast feels as though we could have just copied and pasted last week's podcast and slightly changed the context about the manager, because it's 1 week further than what it should have gone on. And I'm miserable about it. I'm miserable about the Borough, Nathan. Let's end it there and put everyone else, including ourselves, out of their misery. If you have enjoyed, if you've made it to the end, then honestly, I applaud you, because this has been just an absolutely brutal 40 minutes or whatever it's been. So all I'm just going to say is thank you for watching and listening. Nathan, well done for turning up today. You turned up when it counted, and that's all I can ask of you. So thank you for watching and listening. Thanks, Nathan, for being here and putting himself through more pain. That has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast. Please, God, give us something to be positive about next week, Borough. See you next week.